Okay, so we are on the final probably session of learning this. So we're going to review, but we're only going to review the text and the Meiri. We're not going to review all the questions because I'd like to wrap it up today. And we'll see what happens. As usual, I've got like 75% on an approach, but not the full thing. And I was just saying to Chaim Akiva that that's our the three translations or two translations, but not the one I have on the screen. So, okay, I actually am going to. Is it?
I have it on. I will. Performance test, right?
Oh, you know what it might be? Do you know about the discrepancy of numbering in Tehilim? So there's a Gemara that says there's a Gemara, I believe, that says that there are 148 chapters in Tehilim. Okay, and I think that edition of the Meiri holds by that. And what that means is that it should be one off or two off. I think what they do is they hold that the first two. It's a sheet of Tosfos that holds that it's 148. I think. I mean, it's based on some Gemara or whatever. But it is. They hold that the first perek is really two prakim. Sorry, the first two prakim are really one perek. Yeah. Okay. So
this is like Tehilim 151. Have you heard of that?
I have heard of that.
It's like some archaeology, some like what's it called?
That rings a bell.
What's that word? Academic, like.
Oh yeah, interesting.
That there's like a lost 151st perek to Tehilim.
Interesting.
Something like that.
Yeah. Oh, before I forget, have we done the Purim perek? Did we do that last year or the year before? Ayelas HaShachar? I couldn't remember. I just thought of it on the way here. Because if not, then we should do it next week. Okay. Or start it next week. Yeah. Okay. I'll check for sure, but it might be worth doing it again now that we know that the Sporno exists. Okay. Okay. So all right, I'm actually going to reread this in Hebrew as well because the Meiri did translate some things differently last time, and I don't know if I can remember them all, but we'll try. Okay. You know what might be a good idea to do? Actually, it might be a good idea to review it with the Meiri. That's probably good. Okay. So Lamnaseh LeDavid Mizmor Hashem Chakartani V'Teda. So for the conductor by David a psalm, oh Hashem, you have investigated me, you know. So the problem we had was God doesn't know by investigating. So the Meiri had this genius approach, which is that the Torah speaks in the language of man. Okay. But what he said is with a human being, our finest knowledge comes through investigation. So when we want to talk about God's knowledge, we talk about it as if it is like investigation quality knowledge. And then he uses that for all of the ways to talk about God going through. Okay. So that's you've investigated me and you know. Ata yadata shivti v'kumi banta l're'i merachok. You knew my sitting and my rising up. You understand my thoughts from afar. So sitting down and rising up, he says basically like encompass. Oh, sorry. And then the second one also, orchi v'rivi zerisa v'chol drachai hiskanta. You, my path and my repose you have encircled, and all of my ways, you're acquainted or familiar with all my ways. Okay, so he had like two ideas in here. One is human beings only do four things. They get up, they sit down, they walk, and they lie down. Okay, and all your emotions are just transitions between those states. So by saying that God knows all those four things, he's saying that God knows like the full range of your activities. What?
Like saying no. You swim.
Yes, you do swim. That is true.
On your way to lie down.
Yeah, you also astronauts fly in space.
Flying down.
Yeah. Sure. Okay, so that was one idea. Second idea was you understand my thoughts from afar. That means that before I think, then you know what I'm going to think, which he's going to return to that in a little while. And then all my ways you've encircled, he says, is another mashal for God's knowledge, because when you want to know something, you observe it with a 360 degree like encircling. So you see it from every angle. So too, obviously God doesn't need to see things from angles, but it means like he has like full knowledge of every aspect of it. And then same thing, you familiarize yourself with all my ways. So you can ask the question on that, you know, familiarizing implies like a quantitative increase over time. And that's ridiculous when you apply it to God. But that's another way that human beings gain knowledge is you become habituated with it where it's second nature, you know? So that's, again, all of these things are depicting like the God's omniscience, but through human ways. Okay. Before the word is on my tongue, Hashem, you knew it all. So that's, again, God knows what you're going to say before you say it. You have fashioned me. No, you've besieged me front and back, and you've placed your hand over me. I forgot what the Meiri said on that one. I should probably open the Meiri. 139. That was pasuk number 5. Oh, I think that's it. That's getting to the idea of God restricting you. That like you can't just do whatever you want. That's if you try to like fly up, I think.
Was it
Yeah.
It says Hakifasi?
Yeah. Wait, hold on. Am I on the right pasuk? Was it 5?
It says it right there. And you said
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Okay. You're looking at the second Dibra Moscow.
that must be.
So it's the same thing as you encircle me. Yeah, so it means you like beseech me. Yeah, I don't know either. You've encircled me. Oh, that was the other thing. I can't move without your knowledge. Okay, so that's another thing, is like all your emotions are known by God. And then he says, he mentions the 2 directions in place of the 4. And then he says, you put your hand above me, which is a muscle of upward motion. So he says, if I wanted to go up, then your palm is above me. And that includes down. So now you've got all 6 directions, and it means that God's knowledge extends to every motion you take. So all the positions you take and all the motions you take. All right. Plia das mimeni niskava luchala. So that means your knowledge, how do I translate it here? Your knowledge is wondrous from me. Knowledge is too wondrous for me. It is lofty. I'm incapable of it. Which means that I can't understand how you know all this stuff, right? Your knowledge is beyond me. Then he switches gears here, okay, which is if you want to sin. That is where can I go from your spirit? Where can I flee from your presence? If I go up to heaven, you're there. And if I go to the grave, Targum says your word is there. So what does that mean? That means if I want to sin, I want to read this one because I like this inside. How do you say that word? Kiftani, since your knowledge encompasses me from all around. When we said that. When I sin against you, and I want to conceal myself from your spirit, meaning your spirit is your decree upon me and your will. Where can I go? Where can I hide from your presence? Uflia, okay, etc. Okay, that's just grammatical. Yeah.
It's an interesting way that I've never thought about that concept before.
Yeah.
Like, whatever I try to do, how do I get away from your will?
Yeah.
Like, is that like everything that we're going to interact with is existing because God wills it to exist?
Right.
So like, I can run away to a cave, but then I'm in a cave that God's willing to exist, and therefore, like, I can't hide from God using anything that He created.
Yeah, exactly.
I've never thought.
Yeah, no, it's a good thought, and I think the analogy that I like using is it's like if you were in a simulation. I'm not one of those people, but if you were in a simulation and you were trying to outrun the programmer,
Yeah.
It's like, what are you trying to do? Like the programmer knows and programmed any place where you can go. So it's like, it's going to register and he's going to like have anticipated it from long beforehand. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. We're going to revisit that when we get back to the end, the new part. Okay. So then we said this, then this part is just elaborating on the idea. If you go to the heavens, etc. If you took up the wings of the dawn, then he's at the end of the sea. There your hand would guide me and your right hand would grab hold of me. Okay, but if I say, and I want to read this one inside again, this will be foreshadowing. If I say in my heart, that is not Meiri. Oh yeah. Did it start on the last page? Yes. Gam sham yadcha tankim umilas yushufeni minyan neshef means like darkness. V'him shnei shorashim neshef v'shuf inyan echad hu inyan choshech klomer derech mashal. If I want to hide in a dark place. So that's first time he was trying to escape God by running away to where God's decrees couldn't reach him. Now he's trying to get to a place where God can't see him. a slightly different thing. So what'll happen? So you won't see me and see my actions. To you, darkness is no different than light. So you can see in the dark. Okay, then we're about to hit our pivot, or our not our pivot, our outstanding pasuk. Ki ata kanisa chiliasa, you created my thoughts to sukinami bet and imi. So that's another way that God knows us, is if you program something, then you know what it's going to do. So he created our thought mechanism, so he knows what we are going to do. And then he says, to sukinami bet and imi, you formed me in my mother's womb. Odcha ki al kino raos niflesa. So that's where the Meiri says, again, I want to read this inside, that he says you got to move the word ma'od, which is odcha al kinoras niflesi, b'dvarim noraim niflaim niflesi b'briasi. So you've created me in a wondrous way, mitzad pulosecha, in terms of your actions. Niflaim ma'asecha v'nafshi yodas ma'od, umilas ma'od hafucha, klomar niflaim ma'asecha b'bria ma'od, v'nafshi yodas. Meaning, not that I know it a lot, but your actions in the creation are wondrous exceedingly, and I know them. That's not true about other animals. Now, you might say, well, aren't other animals also designed with chachma? So he says, even though their design is also wondrous, all of their actions and movements and faculties are known, as the dissectors know. Their souls don't know, not the dissectors. The animal souls don't know. They don't have a rational soul like I do. Okay, then 15. Lo nichad atzmi mimeka asher usesi basesa rukamti betatios arts galmi ra'u einacha v'al stifraka kulim mikasevu yamim yutzaru v'lo echad bahem. So you formed me in my mother's womb, and he goes through the whole formation of outdated anatomy about how the sperm basically says, you know me through my DNA. That's the modern analogy. From even before the egg is fertilized, you know how it's going to turn out. My formed your eyes have seen, and they're all written in a book. Book is another mashal for clear knowledge, because we save our best knowledge for the books, so it's like God knows it very well, and it's formed over time. And then he has a little creek sieve here, velo echad behem, so meaning the one belongs to him, and velo echad bahem, and there is not one in them, which means that when you're a fetus, you don't have an echad, you don't have a unique mind. So even before your mind forms, God knows you, and then your mind belongs to God. Yeah.
I was wondering this last time, and then how does something work out with the paper that you're writing right now?
Yeah, I was gonna mention that.
Because
writing
the book.
The book, yeah.
Because
book.
When I was learning with track, when we were talking about that pasuk.
Yeah.
And I guess according, I don't remember who.
Rambam.
What is it, Rambam? I
don't know what you're gonna say, but
the book is the universe.
Oh, okay. Rambam says that. I don't know if the Rambam says. Yeah.
So I was wondering if that fits into this pasuk at all, this idea that it's recorded in the cause and effect of creation even before it actually happens.
Yeah, so that fits in really well. I don't know if this is the same idea that you and Rabbi Trackman did, but because I'm writing this paper or this article on it for hopefully tomorrow, then my mind is in it, and I'll read you the Ralbag. This is not what I'm writing about, but it's in 32. Ralbag. So this is in this week's Parsha. The Ata, Moshe says about after the Cheda Egal, the day after. The Ata im tisa chatasam v'im ayin mechini na misifrcha asher kasafta. And now, if you will forgive their sin, ... v'im ayin, and if not, mechini na misifrcha asher kasafta. Please erase me from your book that you have written. V'yom Hashem el Moshe, mi asher chatali emchenem misifri. Hashem says, the one who sinned against me, I will erase from my book. So what is this book? So you got a four-way machlokas, basically, okay? Either it is the Sefer HaZechuyos, like the book that we want to be written in on Rosh Hashanah, or it is Olam Haba, or it is life, physical life. He's asking to be killed, or it's reality, which I guess you could say is like both this world and the next world. So that is the Ralbag, and the Ralbag has this good explanation. Where are you, Ralbag? I think I skipped him. Ralbag B'Yer Milos. He says like this. The book that God wrote is existence in its entirety. Kihu alo mimenu, because it is caused by him. So saying erase me from the book that you've written is like saying take my soul. This existence is compared to a book. Because just as a book is indicated in the form or the image that is in the mind of the person who produced it, right? So in other words, you plan the book in your mind and then you write it physically. So too, the sensory world reflects the system of the conceptual world, which exists by Hashem, from which existence derives. So it's a nice mashal. Yeah. So it's basically like the laws of nature that God authored. We even use that phrase. Okay, so yeah, and a lot of the Mefarshim on this week's Parsha quote, or some Mefarshim quote our pasuk. Okay, so now we're almost up to where we left off last time. Our pasuk in Tehilim.
Okay.
Yeah.
On this week's Parsha?
The Mefarshim on this week's Parsha about the book quote this this pasuk. Yeah. Okay. This is the last. No, we have two more pesukim that we read last time. V'li ma yakru re'echa el me atzmu roshehem asaprem meho yirbun hekitzosi v'odi imach. Let's just reread this because I read that fast last time and don't remember it. He says, okay, where are we? Nope, still going. Still going. Okay. Yeah, your thoughts. Klomar machshavosecha. Klomar yakru be'enai machshavosecha. Your thoughts are not rare. Shlo uchal lahasigam. They're like unattainable in my eyes. Ma atzmu ratzalomar ma rabu roshem. How numerous are their headings? Ratzalomar hasagas klale, meaning grasping their even the general principles, even and all the more so the particulars. Okay, fine. Asaprem, if I count them, if I come to count them, I won't be able to do that. And they're more than the sea. Than the sand. Even if I stayed up all night, even if like I just stayed up all night just counting God's ideas. All right. And I devoted myself day and night to this. You'd be with me. I wouldn't be able to get to the end. Okay, now we switch. Okay, this part's new. Okay, so just keeping in mind, right? We have the main themes. I think we summarized. That's for the first time. Oh, so we have these couple observations at the end. Tamar said the Meiri learns this to be much more about God's all-encompassing knowledge and man being in awe of it than our assumption about the inescapability. So when we learned that, we were talking about like he can't escape God, which is definitely there, but this is much more about how God's knowledge is everywhere and man is in awe of it. I don't know if this was Tamar or someone else. Relationship between the Yetzer Hara's pitfall of saying that you could run away from God and knowledge of science as an antidote to that. Yeah, I think that was a approach we were developing. And then Isaiah says that there were three topics covered: man's physical form, God's knowledge, and man's knowledge. Okay, now we're poised for this last part. Okay, so this is new. So let's read the pasuk again. Im tiktol Eloah Rasha v'anshe damim suru meni. If you kill, O God, a Rasha, and men of bloodshed depart from me. So what does this mean? Meiri says, Im titol pirshu bo shuhu tefila al misasan. So they explained about it. That's the Radak, the Sadigon, Rashi, and Ibn Ezra, the whole gang. That's a tefillah about the death of the Rashayim. So that's how they say it. So meaning like, if only you would kill the Rasha, I think. Okay.
That you would.
Oh, that you would, right. That's a tefillah. Uladati hu nimshach l'masha amar. According to my opinion, this is a continuation of what he was saying from before. Klomar, afilu im tiktol Rasha. This is a funny progression. If I were to try to count them, even if I stayed up all night, even if you killed all the Rashayim, okay, so how does that flow? Klomar, shelo yehi shum moneh uma'akev mihis asik b'niflosacha. If there were no obstacles or barriers to my involvement in your wonders, so all those guys who prevent David from learning, v'chein anshe damim yisuru mimeni, and men of bloodshed you remove from me, rotalomar mikol ha'olam, from the entire world, until the whole land is filled with the knowledge of God. So this is like Mashiach time, right? Kill all the Rashayim, everyone has knowledge of God. Nevertheless, I wouldn't be able to grasp your wonders. I think this is an interesting thing about knowledge, by the way, right? I think that there is an underlying assumption that people feel that like you really could know science, like if you got rid of all the obstacles, like we had enough funding, for research studies, then like we could know it. And he's saying no, even if conditions were optimal, there's still an infinite depth or breadth or whatever. Yeah. Okay, so this is not exactly the way we were learning. It's funny. He draws the line. Here, he really makes this a transition pasuk because it is connected to the previous clause, but it is a segue into the next clause because then he does talk about the Rishayim. Okay, so then he says like this. Okay, he just gives a suru is yasuru, if you will remove. All right, yeah, Isaiah.
It's kind of funny that sounds like he's saying like the only obstacles from him pursuing knowledge in the fullest extent are like other people, but like what about his own, I don't know, taivas or inner
that's a good question.
Inner blockages.
Right. That is a good question why he doesn't mention that. I don't know if he's saying that this is the only one, but he does not mention any others. Yeah. In other words, it could just be highlighting this. Okay, so then he said like this. Asher, okay, so we didn't know how to translate this. Asher Yomrucha with Yud Mem Resh Vav Ches. Chaf, Limizima. Nasu Lashav Arecha. So how did we translated this as those who pronounce your name for wicked schemes. Art Scroll said, I think we got from Art Scroll. Those who pronounce your name for wicked schemes. Alter said, who say your name to scheme your enemies falsely swear. So the Meiri doesn't like that. Okay, he's going to quote people who say that. Vizulasi, so that's, that was the whole gang, sorry. Oh, is this the same gang? No, I got the gang wrong last time. This one includes Sadigon. Radak, Sadigon, Rashi, and Ibn Ezra say that Pirshubo, Lashon, Amira, Bechasron Aleph. So they say it means Amira without the Aleph. Mo Ula Amasa Tomru. So sometimes the Aleph is dropped. V'yomrucha kamo yazkirucha v'yadabru b'cha b'machashavtam rutzonan. So it means if they mention you and speak about you in their thoughts and in their will. Rotzabo shehim medabrim alecha sara, meaning that they speak blasphemously about you. Okay, v'kasha be'enai lomar yomrucha. It's difficult for me to say yomrucha ki hamira in an iksheres below lamed. So he says he rejects it for grammatical reasons. Hashem has, okay, who knows their Shnai Mikra from one of the last parts. What does it mean, Hashem Marta Hayom? Good guess. So I believe it means to select, but it has the connotation of like teruma. I know it's a different word, but like selecting like for the good. In fact, I think what Arab nation comes from this root? The Emirates, right? So an emir is like a prince, right? Is like an exalted one. Okay. So Hemarta Hayom, even though it's not the same binyan, Kichain Pirshu Rabim, Imru Tadik Kitov. Is there a footnote there? Okay, fine. Upirusho Ladati. So what does it mean to me? So this is where it gets very different than what we assumed. Diber ad hena b'yedias hakel. Since up until now it was talking about knowledge of God, shehem kofrim ba. These bad guys deny knowledge of God. Okay, how or why? V'choshvim liyaches chesron lakel. They think to ascribe a deficiency to God. Im yesimehu yodea prati amatzius. If he were to know the particulars of existence. In other words, they think that if God knew the particulars, that would be an imperfection. Uve'asosam oso niskal mi'ediasam, and by making God ignorant of knowledge of the particulars, heim choshim ze lakavod lo. They think that this is an honor for him. Okay, so we need to go a little bit into the.
Ooh, I just read footnote 52, but that's exactly what I was thinking.
Okay, yes. Zohi Kfiras Aristo.
Yeah.
Raymond Nebuchim 3:17. Hashkafa Shnia. Yeah. So this is talking. So we're gonna go. Don't worry, we're gonna go over this. But this is referring to the idea of those who deny God's omniscience. Okay, but unlike people who, unlike what you would expect, you would expect that denying God's omniscience is like, saying that God has an imperfection. The philosophers who deny God's omniscience held that was a perfection. Okay, yeah. Someone raised their hand. I didn't see who it was. Just went up.
Never mind.
Okay, so what do you know about those who deny God's knowledge of particulars? There's Aristotle. Okay, there's one pog. Oh, exciting! I'll do the news flash here, but I won't record it. Yeah. Okay. So, what do you know about people who deny God's knowledge of particulars? What motivates them to do that, or what's their thought? And we want to understand what he's saying, that they think really we hold it's an imperfection of God to not know particulars, but they think that they're elevating him. Yeah, Isaiah.
No, actually, I was gonna say about like opposite camp. Aren't there those who believe that like God knows about like every single, well, actually, I don't know if it's about knowledge or like every leaf that falls is like sort of dictated by Hashem. Would you say that that's sort of on the opposite end of the spectrum?
So here's the difficulty, okay? The difficulty is that when you talk about God's knowledge and God's hashgacha, it's a little interwoven, and I was gonna kind of hope to sidestep that, but I don't know how much we're gonna, we might have to get into that. And in a sense, you're right. Like people who hold that God, like people who, for descriptively, lean too heavily into the God decreeing everything, end up denying free will, and that's a bad thing also. But that's not what we're talking about here. Yeah, Tamar?
I was going to try and answer the question, but it's a little bit of a guess.
Sure.
Is that okay? Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm maybe getting this from somewhere, but like maybe it's like if God's knowledge knows all the particulars, then his knowledge is like changing or something. Like maybe
yes. Okay. Good. That's my understanding of Aristotle's objection to God knowing the particulars, and the argument goes something like this. So Aristotle held that he held that the universe was eternal, right, and that the laws of nature are permanent. Okay, and they're caused by God, but they're not created by God. So Aristotle held that God knows unchanging things, okay, because he causes them. Okay, however, God and his knowledge are one and the same, and we hold that as well. But Aristotle's problem was if God knew the particulars are always changing. So if God's mind is his essence and God's mind relates to the particulars and particulars change, then that would involve a change in God's essence, and that cannot be. So it can't be that God knows the particulars. He only knows like laws of nature and mathematical truths. Okay, like things that are like permanent. Okay, so that's Aristotle's idea. So Aristotle is, so to speak, it's coming from a good place, unless you ask the Ramban who hates Aristotle, but it's coming from a good place. Ramban thought that Aristotle knew Torah and denied it. Okay, I don't know where he got that from, but that's what he holds. And he holds that Aristotle is a Russia for that reason. Okay, historically, I don't think that that's true. I don't really know for sure. But Aristotle was really trying to preserve an idea of Yichud Hashem in a way by saying this. Okay, so that's one explanation for, Isaiah.
What's the counter to that argument? Or
we'll do the counter after we do all the bad arguments. Okay. Yeah. Okay. There's two more that I'm aware of. Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. There might be more than two, but yeah.
Would it be like?
If
What was it?
Would it be humanizing in a sense?
Good
I
question.
mean, if omniscient
Yeah.
thing is involved with just daily matters and
Yeah.
stuff, that makes them like not, makes it like a human.
Okay, so there is an argument like that. I don't know if it is made by the philosophers or if it's made by like the Hamon. But the Hamon say, and this is actually reflected even in like it's reflected in the Nevi'im, okay, which is that a king is not checking to inspect your bathroom to make sure you cleaned it, okay, like he's not like looking into your personal business. He's too exalted for that. So there's this like feeling that if God is involved in the particulars, then that's like a pagam in his kavod. That's like a degradation in his glory.
Be that omniscient.
And right, exactly. And so therefore, to salvage this, to say that if God knew the particulars, then he'd be involved in in the lowly stuff. Then they say like, no, he's too exalted to know this. Yeah, that is definitely an argument. I just don't know if that's the philosopher's argument or that's like the way that people feel about it. Yeah, Isaiah?
I feel like there's a similar argument, say, and this is also weaves in again to God's hashkafa, but like
Yeah.
if God had to know about all things, it would sort of be like a limit. It would show a deficiency in his creation, in that like he could have just created the world and it exists, and he doesn't have to have continuous knowledge of it. But like
That's
if he
interesting.
to know about it, it's kind of
Yeah.
like
Okay,
sort
I
of
definitely
limiting
hear the
him.
argument you're making with the hashgacha thing, right? Like why would God need to know?
We make that argument when it comes to God not making everything fall off the tree directly.
Right, that's true.
We
Right,
make that
we do make that
argument
argument. Right, yeah,
for that.
yeah. Unless you're the Ramban, right? You hold everything's a sinister.
Right.
Right, yeah, yeah, yeah. That sounds plausible. Isaiah, I'm just not aware of any philosopher that says it, but I hear that argument. Yeah, fine.
So I know that the Rambam takes up this argument, but then he talks about why it's not a problem. But that if God has knowledge of
Wait,
particular,
Jose, you're saying you're answering the Rambam yet, are you? I mean, you're not answering. You're not giving the Rambam's answer yet, right?
no,
Oh, fine. Okay, yeah, sure.
I think the problem.
Yeah,
And we talked about it in a Sunday share
Yeah.
a couple times ago. But that if God has knowledge in particular, specifically when it comes to human beings, then you do away with free will, because having God have knowledge of the thing before you do it means that you're not choosing to do it.
Okay, so
that's an argument people.
that's an argument that people make, right? I think that's the that's not a good argument because
Neither do I. I'm just saying.
yeah, you're okay.
The fact that the Rambam brings it up is telling you that there's an argument that's made that's seemingly compelling enough to like.
Right, but I don't think that's I don't think that's in the Meiri's category, because I don't think that is he's talking about a certain class of people who deny God's knowledge, which is people who think that God having knowledge is an imperfection in God. That's saying that's a problem with free will if God knows. Right. So that is a thing, just not this thing. Yeah, Isaiah?
And so I don't know if this is also an argument that people make.
Yeah.
But it seems to me like if you said God had knowledge of all things, so then like there's potentially, if you didn't understand God's knowledge, like a multiplicity argument in as far as like the part of God that knows this thing and the part of God that knows this thing.
Right. That sounds good as well. That would be a that's very similar to like the Aristotle argument, right? That you'd like have to split up God's knowledge. Although I don't know what they would say about God knowing the unchanging things also. That might be a problem there as well.
Because we can.
Yeah.
Well, we have.
Right, but
we're not one though.
Right. Yeah. We do say that there's different ideas in our minds.
Different parts.
Yeah. Yeah.
I wonder if you could say that, like, again, this sounds maybe
I
more.
feel suddenly self-conscious. Like I just asked, okay, everyone come up with as much kafir as you come up with. Yeah. But he's talking about that, he's saying, yeah.
The one that Tamar said, it's the same one that I was gonna say, like
Yeah.
Aristotle's thing, which is like the one that I know. I
Yeah.
haven't really put that much thought into this, I don't think. But like I'm wondering if you could say, this sounds again maybe more like something that like the would say.
Yeah.
But that if God has knowledge in particular, specifically what we would call like bad things,
Yeah.
then like God knowing that bad things are existing and like quote unquote being okay.
Oh,
with
that's
that,
interesting. I do feel like I've heard people say that. Yeah.
What's his name? Charles Dawkins. Or
Yeah.
He or someone like that. Like
Yeah.
these new atheists talk about like children with leukemia. Like your God is okay with
Oh,
that.
right.
And they use
Okay,
that as like pathos against
Okay.
like God being good, because things like children with cancer exist.
Right. So that's actually the what I was going to go to here. So this is from my Eov class. Ayala will recognize this. So Eov basically reasoned like this. Okay, so we observe, this is like what Dawkins would say also, or not. okay, not that he believes in God, but we observe a lack of order and injustice, order and justice in human affairs. So there's two possibilities. Either God knows everything or God doesn't know everything. Okay. If he knows everything, so either you must say that he is mashgiach, is he supervises the world and human affairs are ordered or governed in line with justice, or you say that God's mashgiach, but it's not just. Okay. There's a lack of order or justice. If you say that he's mashgiach and things are oh, that's a typo. Governed. Yeah. And things are not in accordance with justice, then there's two possibilities. Either God is not capable of governing things justly, or he is capable, but he chooses not to because of some bad meat or evil intent. Okay.
Evil God.
Yeah. So Eov makes the following argument. Okay. He says, you can't say that God is incapable because he created the world. And you can't say that God is evil because he's perfect. Okay. Or because it would stem from multiplicity, or it would stem from emotions. So that's absurd. So then you can't say that God is mashgiach and yet things are not in line with human justice. So you must say that God is mashgiach on the world, but things are in line with justice. But then there's a problem with that, which is Eov said, well, look at me, right? If God were just, then I would not be suffering. Okay, so he denies that possibility. So then what must he deny? He must deny that God knows everything. So he embraces this view that God doesn't know everything. And then that gets him out of this justice problem. It's the Dawkins thing. He says, God is not mashgiach on that which he doesn't know. And that's why there's a lack of order and justice in human affairs. Okay, and then this is just from Eov, is that according to the Malbim, he says that Eov believed full on in astrology, that everything is just deterministic, and according to the Rambam, everything operates by, Eov said everything operates by chance. Okay, so then the question, what was that?
Interesting focus.
Yeah. So then this is from the the Shall Have a PowerPoint. Okay, so the question we asked, which is, why did Eov deny God's omniscience and affirm the other things about God? Like, why did he deny omniscience and affirm omnipotence? Why not the other way around? So the answer is, denying God's omniscience is not necessarily philosophically objectionable, even though it does go against Torah. So then I present to my high schoolers, Aristotle held that God can only know unchanging things, because if he knew changing things, then his mind would change. Okay. Ralbag, for his reasons, held that God can't know the outcomes of free will decisions. Okay. This is answering your question, Isaiah. Rambam holds that God does know changing particulars and the outcomes of free will decisions, but we can't know what God's knowledge is. Okay. Rabbi Fox once explained to me that basically the Ralbag and Rambam, that the essential machlokes is Rambam is forced to say that our knowledge is not real knowledge, that God's knowledge is like real knowledge and our knowledge is not. And Ralbag doesn't want to say that, so that's where Rabbi Fox theorized that the machlokes comes from, but that's beyond above my pay grade. Okay, but here's two more arguments. So Ayala 4 years ago asked, can't we say 5 years ago, 4 years ago, can't we say that since Hashem is outside of time, then that's how we know he can know the particulars without changing? Okay, maybe that's another solution. So I said, yes, but at the end of the day, he'd still have to confront the question, how does God know the particulars if he's out of time? Oh, so this is where, okay, yeah.
Maybe a simpler way to answer the question is that still puts us back to square one. We don't know. That's just the wrong.
Yeah, that's why the Rambam is an appealing answer. But then I quoted this, and this is why I brought this up. Seymour Feldman, who wrote this book, Gersonides, Judaism with the Limits of Reason, says like this. Several of the philosophical arguments against strong omniscience, meaning knowing every single thing, concerning the question, what does it mean to know a particular? Since in this context, we are focusing on space-time particulars, this is kind of similar to what someone said. So since we are focusing on space-time particulars, events that occur within a spatial temporal framework, we need to know how such particulars are known. According to the philosophers, we know them through our sensory organs, which are themselves rooted in space-time framework and hence can apprehend what is spatially and temporally located. In short, in order to know a space-time particular, I must be able to pick out this particular by specifying its spatial and temporal place within the world of space-time events. This is not a problem for us since we have the appropriate sensory apparatus to accomplish this task. But what about someone who does not have such an apparatus? As Kant argued, the world of space-time is knowable only to those who are themselves endowed with the sensory equipment to grasp it. If there are beings that do not have this apparatus, the world of space-time is not an object of knowledge for them. The philosophers then conclude that since God is ex hypothesi, I don't know what that means, ex hypothesi, incorporeal and transcendent, God does not have the cognitive apparatus that would enable him to have knowledge of space-time particulars. Being outside space-time, God does not know what is in space-time. So that is making the argument, whoever said it was either you or Tamar, about like saying that God knew particulars would be like making his knowledge too human. Yeah, I was giving. Yeah, right. So I think that's like a philosophical version of that argument. Yeah. Okay.
I want to go through that again.
Yeah.
I just don't know enough about philosophy, but is time something that's just happens as a result of what God created, or did God create time?
We hold that God created time.
So
Yeah, so that's how the Rambam would that is connected to how the Rambam, God doesn't exist in time, he created time, and time is connected to physicality. Yeah, you're right to say like maybe we shouldn't go into this. Yes, I don't know what time is. Okay, so that's Kant's answer, is the fact that Hashem is outside of space-time makes him unable to know what is in space-time.
I still feel like there's like a gaping like fallacy.
Well, okay, well the Rambam also would answer this by saying, yeah, God's knowledge operates differently than ours does.
His premise that is that the world is only knowable to those who are endowed with the sensory equipment to grasp.
Yeah, so that's
It feels blatant.
Okay.
I don't have to kill
so that's like, it reminds me of like of like Plato's argument for the reality of the soul, which also feels flimsy in the same way to me, which is I've never seen this inside, but I've been told that in order to touch something physical, you have to be physical. Ideas are not physical. Okay, you can prove that ideas are not physical because they they're abstract, right? Like you can't picture them, you can't draw them, whatever. So there must be a non-physical part of you that can interact with the non-physical ideas.
Right.
So that's the type of argument he's making. He's saying that in order for you to have knowledge, for there to be a meeting of your mind and a space-time particular, then your mind must exist or operate via something that is subject to space-time. You can think about it later. We don't have to like go into this. I want to share one more though, and this is my favorite one. Okay. Okay. Oh, sorry. So okay. So I had to do some word of the day. So what's the definition of truth?
I don't know.
You probably heard me ask this like a bajillion times.
Maybe concordance with reality.
Yeah, corresponds with reality. Okay, right?
Reality.
Okay.
Okay. That was my question. Is you like a dictionary definition or
No, so this is a philosophical definition.
doesn't mean much.
No, it does.
Correspondence with reality. Okay, what reality mean?
I'll let you make that in two moves.
Yeah.
This is a definition, okay? Because when you say that something is a true or false statement, how are you determining that? When you say like a true or false test, what you mean is that it corresponds with reality. And the reason why this is a big issue is nowadays philosophers deny the existence of objective reality, and therefore they deny truth, or they come up with a different definition of truth, which is not the correspondence definition. And Adler demonstrates, I believe, that from like the earliest thinker through like up until Freud, I think, like through Freud, then the correspondence theory of truth was the theory of truth. And it was only like in this like postmodernist world or whatever that people like, denied that. So it's like, this is a real philosophical thing right now, but I'll show you where you can make the argument. So what's the definition of reality? Is that which exists. What's the definition of existence? That which is real. That's the part where reality and existence are first principles. You can't define those, but you are defining truth. You're not defining reality. Truth is correspondence with reality.
Reality itself.
Truth is not reality, correct. Truth means, truth is a property of an idea or a statement.
Do you say it's like a description of reality?
Is it?
No. I don't think you can. I think you could say reality exists. Truth. My understanding is that truth means that there is that there's a correspondence, like something is in line with reality.
Meaning, my question is truth something that we use to describe what we're doing when we interact with?
I don't use that word that way. Maybe other people can.
No, I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm trying to understand how you're using the definition. Because
Like true false test,
Yeah.
right?
Okay.
George Washington is the 10th president. False. What does that mean? It means that it doesn't correspond with reality. The earth is flat, right?
Okay.
It doesn't correspond. The earth is round. It does correspond with reality.
So then truth is the
Statement is true.
Truth is the quality of correspondence with reality of a statement or an idea.
Okay, I think so.
Okay.
I think this the word correspondence is throwing me.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
Okay. So here's now another argument against God knowing particulars. Okay, this is a fun one. According to Ralbag, only statements having this is why the Ralbag denies that God can know the outcomes of free will decisions. According to Ralbag, only statements having definite truth values can be objects of knowledge. I cannot know now which team will win the World Cup in the year 3000 since that event has not yet occurred. And the statement asserting that one team or another has won it has no present truth value. This holds in God's case too. If he had such knowledge, he would know the non-existent, but the non-existent has no truth value. So what's his answer? So here's his argument. If something only qualifies as knowledge, if it's true, and if truth is defined as correspondence with reality, and if reality is defined as that which exists, and if future events do not exist until they happen, therefore statements about events which haven't happened yet have no truth value. In other words, contingencies, that's the philosophical word for like things that, can be one way or the other, can't be known by anyone, not even by Hashem, because contingencies aren't knowledge. So what I like about this is like a clever answer, I'll call you in a second, because he is saying God knows everything. God has all knowledge, but he's saying that which is contingent isn't knowledge. Yeah, Kiva?
On the first if, what does it mean that much? Like what
I don't know. I don't know that.
It's true. It sounds like he's saying knowing something that's true, but you can know something.
No, you can't know something that's false.
Well, it's not false.
You can know something
It just doesn't exist
Yeah,
yet
know it.
to us.
Right, but I think that
If we're saying outside of time.
right, yeah. I don't know what his definition of knowledge is.
Because
I
it
get
sounds like you're saying knowledge is not just knowing something, it's like a specific knowing, which I don't know what that is.
I think he means, for lack of a better way to say it, knowledge is the mind grasping the correspondence between a thing and reality, a statement and reality, right? Or an idea and reality. Otherwise, it's not knowledge, yeah.
There is knowing a false statement.
Yeah, you can't know a false statement. That's the thing also. That's not like the false knowledge is a contradiction in terms.
Then, knowing something that's against reality.
That would be, so in other words, if you had a false idea, then you would be believing something or imagining something, but you wouldn't be knowing it. You can't speak of knowing knowing what is not true. Yeah.
Just on this, going back to how it relates to God.
Yeah.
I understand that like I'm in Rambam world in my
Yeah.
head, in my mind.
Yeah, and that's my answer to this also.
So,
Yeah.
right. That's okay.
Yeah.
It's not like
Yeah. Ram
God
says.
relates to, if there's any relationship to time, it's a different one.
Yeah, God, you just can't apply any of the categories of.
He's just saying it doesn't exist yet, but
Isn't that what we were saying?
you can say that's only in.
I didn't hear something this past week.
That's only insofar as you're working.
Oh, that's right. You're talking about Spinoza, right?
Yeah.
Okay,
You're
yeah.
saying you can't.
He was bringing up like a lot of these.
Oh, okay, cool. I should listen to
Oh,
that.
yeah, that was.
I'm saving it for my drive on Sunday. But
Oh, so
yeah.
I mean, it's only a
You're
spoiler
saying
if you
much-
don't know the thing in the Mora, but
Yeah.
Ram has a really great mashal in the Mora where he talks about. I guess the way to think about it is like, result-oriented reasoning,
Yeah.
which is like
Based on facts
Aristotle
that-
looks at the universe as it is now and says,
Yeah.
therefore it had to have come about it couldn't have come about, right? Or however you extrapolate
Yeah.
backwards. And he gives a mashal of like a baby who's born and then I guess like weaned and then never knows a female at all. Like human
Yeah.
animal like is raised by their father on an
Yeah.
island. And then one day asks the father, how did we get here?
Yeah.
And the father explains, well, so there's a woman
Yeah.
and you're in the stomach. And then, so the kids start asking things like, well, how it's impossible because if I don't breathe for even a minute, I'll
Yeah,
die. So you're
right.
gonna tell me that there's a baby who's not eating
Yeah.
and not defecating
Right.
and
Yeah.
all these things. So that there's like the child will like write it off as like
Yeah.
impossible.
Right. That's
Like,
good,
he uses
Marshall.
that as emotional
Yeah.
for like what we do when we're like, well, because I experienced
Yeah.
reality this way, it couldn't have ever been different.
That's interesting.
Before
Yeah.
it came
All
about.
right, I gotta listen to it.
Yeah,
All right,
yeah, so-
in the interest of time, let's finish learning Tehilim. Okay, look, I don't think I went into this for no reason. These are the guys he's talking about, right? He's saying they deny that God can know the particulars, but they say that it's a kavod for God. But in reality, it is an imperfection. Yeah.
Can I ask this off the record?
Yeah, hold on.
And then I'll ask you on the record again if it's okay.
So the question that was asked was would the Radak call the Ralbaga a Meiri with the and the Radak? No, the Meiri call the Ralbaga Koifer? And the answer is mayhap, probably possibly. Well, the real answer is like this: is this is Pesach's theory about the Ikarim. Okay, the Rambam says in the 8th Iker. Every single letter was given of the Torah was dictated to Moshe at Sinai, right? So you have a famous machlokas about what about the last pesukim of the Torah, right. And Ibn Ezra holds that those were written by Yoshua. So would the Rambam call Yoshua an Iker? Would the Rambam call Yoshua a koher? Would the Rambam call the Ibn Ezra a koher for holding that about Yoshua? So, or let's say Rambam holds that Olam Haba is not physical, and then the ultimate punishment is kares, and Ramban holds that Olam Haba is Yemos Mashiach. So would either call the other one a kofar? So the answer that Rav Pesach gave is no. Is that within each ikr there's an ikr, and then there's an ikr within the ikr. There's the ikr, and then there's the wrapping. There's like the core concept, and then there's like the pratim of the concept. And Rav Pesach holds that the Rambam would say that if you hold that the last pesukim of the Torah are written by Yoshua, that's not going to make you a kofar. Or let's say like Hillel in the Gemara, who held that Mashiach already came. That the real ikar of Mashiach is that you hold by the concept of Yemos Mashiach, and that the Torah will like come to fruition or whatever. But like the details, there could be differences on. So the question is this a detail or not? And I believe Rav Pesach would say that certainly about the Ikarim from 6 and on. I don't know about the first 5, because the first 5 really have to do with God.
Right.
Debatable a little bit. And no, so this is the other side question of the Rambam puts this as the 10th Iker. Okay, and it's in the category of things that are not about God's essence. And not only that, but when it comes to defining someone as the particular kinds of kofrim. So what does the Rambam call someone who has a mistake about God's essence? Which kofar term? No, a min. Okay, right. So min is if you hold that God doesn't exist, or if he's more than one, or if he has a body, or if he's bound by time. Okay, but if you deny that God has knowledge of the particulars, you're an apikoros. So that's another thing that's always been a question mark in my mind of like, why is this a different status, especially if God's knowledge and his essence are one and the same? I have my own theory, but it is way too speculative for me to say on the record or off the record. It's in here. Well, God knows it before I say it. Okay, so that's all that matters. Okay, so let's finish this up. V'zehu asher yomrucha limizimah. This is what this is a beautiful shot. This is what it means that they raise you up in scheming. Rotzalomar asher yiyachsu lo shleimus v'mala. They ascribe to you, I think he means verbally, they ascribe to you perfection and exaltedness, l'fi machshavtam, and mentally, according to their thought. Ba'asosam oso oscha, by making you nischal hayadia bechelke hamatzius, by making you ignorant of the particulars of reality. Okay. V'naso kumo nasu v'kumo v'nasa es kol masam kumo v'nasu ha'alef ha'achrona ha'alef blah blah piushubo v'nasu ar echa oscha l'shav k'inyan lo tisa Hashem l'shav. So he also says it's about God's name. V'linir shum inyan hisnatus. I think it means to raise up. Klomar gam him yomru lanase oscha b'tachlis idea. They also say that they're elevating you to the highest level of knowledge. The oso haisnasus l'shav, but that raising up is false. Eno hisnasus rachlisar. It's not actually raising up; it's actually a degradation. Ulefarsim she'eno mehem. Now here's where he switches. In order to publicize that he, David, is not one of them, hodia kavanasa lehem. He tells his intent to them. Amar, he says, "Halom esah nafashem esne uviskumamecha kumo ubemiskumamecha the eskotat, ariv, miloshin katata. He says, those who hate you, Hashem, I hate. And those who quarrel with you, I quarrel. The tachli sina, sinesi, I hated them with the utmost hatred. Romans al richu kadeos. This is talking about how far their opinions are from each other. Okay, or there's another gear that says richu hayedios. I think Deos makes more sense. A couple Indian Amar v'oivim hayuli, and he says they're enemies to me. Amar, this is an extreme statement. Shani soneosam, I hate them. Ad she'evchar mavis me'at musai. I would rather die than be one of them. I'd rather die than be someone who holds that God doesn't have knowledge of particulars. V'hu and that's what he means when he says in the last pasuk, Chakreini kel v'dal levavi v'dal sarapai. Investigate me, God, and know my thoughts. Rotzlomar, machshavosai, know my thoughts. Im tira derech otzebi, if you see a vexing way in me, Rotzlomar, derech Meiri. If you find a way of rebellion, miloshin maruv atzvu ad she'eshve bedas achas im deos hakofrim. If one aspect of my mind is equal to the opinion of the kofrim, nacheni baderech olam. Then so do we translate that as guide me in the way of the world? Yeah, guide me in the way of eternity. So he's saying klomer hamiseni, it means kill me. Miloshan holech ahadam el beis alamo, like go to your eternal home. V'chein b'derech kol haaretz. Yeah. So that ending was very interesting. Okay, so he's saying basically, just to summarize here, that these guys. So I've rhapsodized up until pasuk 19 about how God knows everything and He knows every single thought and all my movements, and He knows like what I'm going to do, and even if I sin, I can't hide from Him. But these guys, they think they're raising God up by saying that He doesn't know the particulars, but really they're lowering Him, and I hate them so much that I'd rather die than be one of them. So the question is like, what's the unity in the perek, and why does He hate them so much? Yeah, Isaiah. I'm going to go a little bit over
kind of
this time. Yeah,
kind of like a historical question.
yeah.
Is he saying that this philosophical argument went back to the time of David HaMelech?
Yes,
because like I think of like it being like there's back then there's like people who believe in Yichud Hashem and like idol worshippers.
Right.
And like if you don't believe in Yichud Hashem, you're an idol worshipper.
Yeah. So I don't know historically, like from based on like academics, but I do know that the Ramban at the end of Bo mentions that that there were three opinions. I'm not gonna read the whole Ramban at the end of Bo, even though I do that every time I read the Ramban. But I'm not gonna do that. I just want to read the intro. This is the last Ramban on Bo. He says, where is it? Yeah, here we go. He says, ever since there was avodah zarah in the world, from the time of Enosh, then people started becoming mixed up in emunah. And he says three categories. Some denied God and said that the world is eternal. They denied God and said that He is not. Some said He denied the particulars. They said, how can God know? Is there knowledge on the Most High? Some acknowledged God's knowledge, but they denied His hashgacha. And they made man like the fish of the sea. That God is not mashgiach on them. Saying that God abandoned the earth. Yeah, so Ramban says that people like this have existed since Enosh. Yeah. So what's the unifying idea here? I mean, it's easy to see the potential for unity. It's almost like a Mishlei pasuk that there's David who recognizes that God knows everything and there's no escape and is in awe of God's knowledge. And then there's these other people who deny God's knowledge and say it's a perfection of His, and David hates them. Yeah, Isaiah?
I guess like it kind of seems to me like to David, like the fact that God has knowledge of particulars, it like permeates everything.
Yeah.
Literally God knows all the things.
Yeah.
And like for his experience of living, it's like that's like all of reality to him. Like he sees God in everything, kind of.
Right.
And if he was one of the people who didn't have that knowledge, like that to him would be like removing his entire way that he interfaces with Hashem.
Okay.
and
Okay.
like knows God, and he wouldn't have that, and that would be
Okay.
like
So
not
that,
like
that's really good. I'm gonna withhold my comments until after I hear what Tamara says, and then I'll amplify that. Yeah, Tamara.
This is a slightly different comment. So if you want to say what you're saying.
Okay, sure. So I think what he's saying is like this is exactly what Isaiah said. It's interesting that um if you deny, let's say, and maybe I'm wrong about this. Let's say you deny God's eternality. Okay, not by saying that he's created, but let's say like you hold like Aristotle that the universe is also eternal, right? And the way the Rambam formulates the fourth ikr, then if you say that anything else is eternal other than God, then that's a denial of the fourth ikr. So let's say you do that, okay? I would argue maybe that's not going to have the biggest impact on your decision making. You could argue that it will, okay? But I will tell you one thing: if you deny that God knows stuff, that is going to have a disastrous effect on your decision making, because then you're going to say that what you're going to end up doing is you're going to end up saying that there are pockets of reality that like don't operate based on Chochmas Hashem and Ratzon Hashem, or I could do stuff and get away with it. It's going to be a matir. Like denial of the other Ikarim is not going to necessarily be, of the Ikarim about God is not necessarily going to be a matir for wickedness. You know, if you deny Yichud Hashem, you could be a very kind person, you know, and deny Yichud Hashem. You might not be a perfected human being.
Well, maybe I have to brush up on my economy. If you deny the existence of God, that would allow.
Yeah, that's true.
Right?
Yeah, that is true. Yeah, that would be in this category as well. Yeah, yeah. But so that's what I think that's why I like why Isaiah said it is like, you know, you cannot just pay lip service to the fact that God knows everything and he's perfect. Because if you don't have this idea of God knowing everything and that being that perfection, it's going to affect your behavior as well. And that's, I'll tip my hand a little bit. I think that's partially why the Rambam classifies this at the in the last Ikarim about like schar v'onesh, you know, and that kind of thing, like Torah not being exchanged and mitzvahs not being nullified. That this is along with the Ikarim that have to do with action, you know, with human action, and because denying this is disastrous for your human action. So David is talking about how in order to maintain, and not only that, everyone is prone to thinking this. I mean, that is the Gemara in Chagiga or the Mishnah in Chagiga 2:1 says, anyone who does not have mercy on the glory of his creator, it'd be better if you were never created. And the Gemara says that's someone who's over an avera b'seser. That's someone who does an avera in secret, you know. And then the Gemara does, you know, goes and explains that. But like, whenever you do an avera in secret, then, and that's why he emphasizes you can't hide from God. It is giving into this part of you that wants to deny that God has total yediyah and the world operates based on his yediyah. And you're like you know, feeding that part of yourself. And so that's why it's like a, you know, you're really negating your existence at that point. And that's why David says, I would rather not exist than hold this, because it's like the underpinning of human existence. It's not only is it a denial of God, you know, God's knowledge, but it's a matir you to like live like an animal. Yeah, Tamar.
So I want to kind of actually build on what you were just saying to talk about, because I guess when I originally asked about this perek.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that if you remember why you originally asked.
Oh yeah. I think there's multiple things I think, but one thing that really struck me was like this tone, where like he looks like he's trying to get away from God. And I'm just positing that maybe like for all of us, we don't have this level of awareness that David has. But I think that if you really saw God's knowledge in literally everything that you do and everywhere that you go, and the completeness that you cannot escape, I think it's just kind of overwhelming. Like the tone isn't what it is. I think it's like you know, you're getting like knocked over by the ocean, like in terms of just like God's knowledge is in everything.
Yeah, and I think it's kind of reassuring to see that David himself feels that way. You know, like if someone who has that much knowledge of God can feel like I can't escape, like, oh, so David wants to escape also, you know, but then that should also make you realize, well, like I want to do that like every time I do an avera, you know, like, and so like it really is you know, humbling and encouraging, but like scary as well.
Yeah, I think also like I kind of felt like why would he be upset about God's knowledge? Like we all know this already, and you know. But I think that if you really knew it, it is like naturally a little disturbing from just like the way that people would normally operate. You have to,
Right.
it is like an overwhelming thing.
Yeah, and I think that's why okay, let me I'll ask you this. When do most Jews think about this, if they think about it at all? I was gonna say Rosh Hashanah, right? Yeah, right. The series made Tshuva, let's say, but Rosh Hashanah is like with the Zichronos. That's when everyone says it, you know. And I think it is a little too overwhelming. I don't think we go. I'm trying to think if we say this as explicitly anywhere in the daily davening. I don't think we do. I mean, I don't think we say it like in Zichronos, like, you know, every single thing that a person does, then you know, and you know everything from Ma'aseh Bereishis, and every single, you know, all of man's actions are written in a book. You know, like it's overwhelming. Yeah, Ayala.
I just wanted to ask a clarification question to make sure
Yeah.
I was understanding something you said before about this idea of like God knowing the particulars.
Yeah.
And were you saying before that it's not like philosophically necessary to say this, but we know this because Hashem told us?
I think that's the case. Yeah. I mean, I'm saying I don't know if this is a thing you can prove outside of either nevuah or evidence, like miracles. Yeah. And by the way, who's the first person to deny God's knowledge?
Well, I guess.
In the pesukim, I should say.
Adam?
You say Adam?
Cain.
Yeah. So
Not Adam,
right.
no.
So I think yeah, you could say Adam. I mean, because he was trying to hide from right.
But is that denier or just like?
Yeah, I think that there's I mean, he says I heard you coming and I was ashamed, but Cain overtly says like lo yadati Hashem ra'achi anochi, and the Radak says that he said that because he actually thought that God didn't know, and that's why God was asking. You know, yeah. So just to tie it all together here, I was going to try and make a knit together in the lowest parts of the earth, Marshall. That didn't come together like okay. But so the main idea here is, and the takeaway is that your awareness and internalization of this idea of God's omniscience cannot just be a thing you pay lip service to, and it has to permeate the way that you look at every aspect of reality. And to the extent that it doesn't, it's going to affect your actions as well. And that's what the Rishonim have in common. And the one thing I feel like I don't exactly get is like this thing that David's saying, if there's any aspect of me, of this in me, then like kill me, you know, like it's that disastrous of an idea, which again, that's the mission of Chagiga, is anyone who doesn't veer in secret at that moment deserves never to exist, you know, like it is that much of a corruption of the Tehilim Elokim. And I think because this Iker sits at the divide, at the unifying point between the Tehilim Elokim and like the fact that you're an emotional, psychological being, you know, like this denial of this translates directly into your behavior. So yeah, there's more to be said on here, but I don't think I want to spend a fourth week on this. I don't want to think about this idea anymore. No. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay. All right. Good. Definitely a good thing. And this is definitely one that I want to come back to. I mean, not every perek of Tehilim that we learn, I'm like, you're going to come back to this one. This one's got good stuff. Okay. Thanks for suggesting it tomorrow. All right. Have a good night, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night.